Shalom and welcome to the video for chapters 13 through 14. As you can see, the topic today is verbless sentences and the adjective. Let's jump right into our focus questions. First, why isn't there a verb in that sentence? You will, in fact, come across sentences in the Hebrew Bible and in our practice book, in our grammar book, that have no verbs. So how does that work? How do you translate those, and what are those sentences all about? Second question, how do Hebrew adjectives work? We haven't really touched much on adjectives, so we're going to talk about what an adjective is and how adjectives work within Biblical Hebrew. And thirdly, how does Hebrew form comparisons? If I want to compare, for instance, this person with that person, how might Hebrew go about doing that? These are the three questions that we're going to focus on today. There are other issues that are addressed in chapters 13 through 14, which I highly encourage you to look at because they will show up on your quiz. But these are the topics that I want to hit on today, in large part because they're the most challenging part of chapters 13 through 14. So let's talk about verbless sentences. Your English teachers, if they were anything like mine, were always reminding you that you need to have a subject and a verb. And not only do you need to have both, they need to be in agreement with one another. And so you see here the charming lady on the left. The ruler struck the student. So the ruler being the subject and the verb being struck, and the student, of course, being the direct object. And then our equally charming gentleman to the right, who in fact does remind me of my high school AP English teacher. Are you going to add a verb to that sentence? So you see, in English, we need these parts of the sentences in order for them, in fact, to be complete sentences. But in Hebrew, things are a little bit different. So we need to have a new kind of teacher. Whoops. We need to have a new teacher. Forget them. I'm your new teacher now. We need to listen to Moses, who's going to teach us a new way how to make sentences without verbs. So pay attention. Okay, a Hebrew sentence with at least one noun and one other word can form a complete sentence. But completely without a verb. You don't even need the verb in order for it to be an actual, legitimate, complete sentence. So how does that work? In the translation, you actually have to provide the verb to be. So the is, was, are, those sorts of verbs, you actually need to provide those in the translation, and they are assumed by the Hebrew. So let's look at a couple examples. Hu David. These are some pretty familiar words already. This is a complete sentence, though it may not look like one at first glance. Let's look at what do the words mean. Well, who is the pronoun for he, right? And then David needs no explanation. This is Israel's king David. Now, this is a complete sentence, and this is how you would translate it. He is David. And you notice I put in parentheses the verb is as a way of showing you that we actually have to supply that. You won't see that in the Hebrew text. Let's look at the next line. Anachnu b'Moav. Anachnu b'Moav. Okay, I imagine there are some things you recognize. For instance, the first common plural pronoun. Here, anachnu. This is the first common plural pronoun, so we. It means we, right? What is the second one? Well, that bait with the shavah beneath it is the preposition meaning in or at. And then Moav, of course, is the name of the land of Moab. So how would you translate this? Well, this is another verbless sentence. There's no verb in here, but it is in fact a complete sentence. We are in Moab. So again, the parentheses there to indicate that we are supplying that in our translation. Let's look at the next one. Sarah hi ha'aim. Sarah hi ha'aim. Okay, so Sarah, this is the name for Sarah. No explanation needed. He, do you remember what he means? He is the pronoun for she. This he means she, and who means he. So this Sarah, she, and then ha'aim. Ha'aim. What is the ha? Well, the ha is the definite article, and aim is the noun for mother. So the mother. How would you translate this then into English? Sarah, literally, kind of woodenly, Sarah, she is the mother. Or we could say Sarah is the mother. And that's more fluid in English, and that would be entirely appropriate. The pronoun is sometimes there in Hebrew, that extra pronoun. It doesn't have to be there. It could just be Sarah ha'em. Sarah is the mother. But oftentimes you'll see this redundant pronoun, Sarah he ha'em. Sarah is the mother. Good. Now, there's another kind of verbless sentence, and it uses the Hebrew word yesh and ain. And the Hebrew word yesh can be used to say there is or there are. There is no difference in how the word looks if it's plural or singular, there is, or if it's plural, there are. It's all the same. When it comes to translating into English, you just have to make the determination and translate it as, either as there is or there are. And then the Hebrew word ain, this is the second one here, can be used to say there is not, there are not. It is used to really to do the negative, to make the negative version of yesh. So there is not, there are not. Let's look at a couple examples. Yesh ish basadeh. Yesh ish basadeh. Okay, so what does this mean? There is, okay, ish, so it's a singular man, so we will leave it as there is. There is a man, basadeh. What is this sadeh? This is the word for field, right? And then we have the bait as the preposition, with the patach beneath indicating that it is definite, that it is the field. Yesh ish basadeh. There is a man in the field. Okay? Ein anashim basadeh. Ein anashim basadeh. So remember, ain is kind of the negative partner of yesh. So no verb. Again, this is also within the realm of verbless clauses. There is no verb here. There is not, there are, I should say, there are no men in the field. There are no men in the field. Ain, no, there are no. And then anashim, since it's plural, that's how we know it's there are as opposed to there is. There is would be for a singular noun. There are no men basadeh in the field. And again, the field is definite. We notice the patach beneath the bait. Okay, let's do a little bit of practice now with verbless sentences using both yesh and ain, and then without those. So ani aim, ani aim. What do you notice about this sentence? Remember, when you're approaching a new sentence, always look for things that are familiar first. Grab for those things that you know first, and then move from there. So ani, maybe you recognize that that's the pronoun, the first common singular pronoun, I. And then we just looked at the word for aim. Sarah hi ha aim. Aim is the word for mother. So this sentence is, I am a mother. I am a mother. Okay. Haruach bashamayim. That's the next one. Haruach bashamayim. Okay, so we have here the definite article ha. And then ruach is a word for wind or spirit. So we have ha ruach meaning the spirit, bashamayim. Okay, so the bait here being the preposition with the patach beneath it. So we have in the, and then what is shamayim? Do you recognize this dual noun, shamayim? Shamayim is the word for heavens. So the Spirit is in the heavens. There we go. The Spirit is in the heavens. Or we could say the wind is in the heavens. Third sentence. Ein zera k'zera b'mitzrayim. Ein zera k'zera b'mitzrayim. Okay, so zera, this is a relatively new word for you. This is a word for seed, or it can also, on a metaphorical level, refer to offspring. We'll use seed in this case. So ain means there is not, or there is not, or there are not. And then we have zara twice, and the kaf here, the kaf, is comparative. So this is a preposition that's added to it. Um, and then Mitzrayim is, of course, the word for Egypt with the bait, the prepositional bait on the front. So this is the translation we get. There is no seed like seed in Egypt. Or if we wanted to put this into better English, there is no seed like the seed in Egypt. So it's saying that Egypt has the best seed, apparently. And in this sentence, it makes sense to translate Zerah as a seed as opposed to descendant or something like that. But again, notice there is no verb in this sentence whatsoever. The verb is really assumed in the word ein, the first word in the sentence. Okay, let's look at the fourth sentence. Baderech layam yesh harim v'sadot. Baderech layam yesh harim v'sadot. Okay, what do you notice here that is familiar? Well, you might begin with the word derech. That's a word that we've had for a very long time, and you'll notice that it has a preposition on the front, and not only a preposition, but also a patach indicating the definite article, ba derech. And so something in the path, okay, that's what we've got so far. Layom, layom, okay, that's interesting, or layam, excuse me, layam, that's interesting. We have the lamed, which is a preposition, and then we have the patach beneath it to indicate the definite article, and then we have the word yam. Yam is the word for sea. And so to the sea is what that whole, really is an entire prepositional phrase, layam, to the sea. And then here we have our yesh, the word we've been working with, yesh. And yesh means there is or there are. And so let's hold off on that for a translation. Then we have harim. Maybe you don't recognize this immediately, but you might recognize the hirak yod and the mem. Im, so you might say, this is clearly a plural noun. Let's take off the yod and the hirak yod and the im and see what we have. Har. Do you remember the word har? This is the word for mountain. So this is with the plural added, mountains. Vesadot. This is the feminine plural of sadeh, which is a word we just saw in the previous slide referring to fields. So here's the translation one would get. On the way to the sea, there are mountains and fields. Okay? On the way to the sea, yesh, there are, and we know it's plural because we have reference to both harim and vesadot. Plural nouns, but also two separate things. So this is clearly there are mountains and fields. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now we're going to transition away for a little bit from these verbless clauses into Hebrew adjectives. Oh, and I wanted to mention, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, I normally have my face in one of these corners, but today the slides were just so full that I couldn't quite find a corner in which to put them, so you'll have to do without my lovely countenance to aid you in learning this week. But here's the so here we are with the Hebrew adjective. There are four things I want to say about this just as we enter into them, and don't be too intimidated by all this text here. We're going, of course, to go through some examples where you'll get to put some of these rules into practice. Okay, there are two categories of two adjective types that we're really going to cover. The first is called the attributive adjective. Attributive adjective. And this is, in English, we would say something like this, the good king. So in the attributive adjective, the adjective describes the noun itself, namely the king, and he is a good king. And then we're going to talk about predicate adjectives. And this is, the predicate adjectives forms a complete sentence. So here we're back to the verbless clauses. There's no verb there. The verb to be or is assumed. And the predicate adjective describes the state of the noun. So here I've kind of moved into two as well. So attributive adjectives are used to describe a noun, aim tova, a good mother. That would be an example of an attributive adjective. The predicate adjective forms a complete sentence with the noun tova ha'em. The mother is good. Now you might say, wow, there are very few differences between those. I will help you, don't worry, I will help you learn to distinguish between the predicate adjectives and the attributive adjectives, but for now I'm just giving you kind of a helicopter's eye view of this grammatical issue. So just hang tight, and we will get to learning how to distinguish them. But for now, just know attributives describe. They attribute some kind of quality to the noun. In this case, a goodness to the mother, a good mother. The predicate adjective describes the state of the noun, the mother is good. Now there are four forms. I'm now looking at point 3 here. There are four forms of every adjective. These correspond to the four forms of the verb: masculine singular, masculine plural, feminine singular, feminine plural. That is, the adjectives agree with the noun to which they refer in terms of gender and number. Okay? Fourthly, if a noun has an irregular ending, like do you remember av, the word, I have it right here, av and avot? Av is, of course, the word for father, and it means, well, it means father, and one would expect that the ending would be avim, because im is the typical masculine ending, the typical masculine plural ending. But av is a little bit strange, and it actually gets ot, which is the typical feminine plural ending. If you find a noun with an irregular ending like av, which in the plural is avot, or ir, which is the word for city, so it's feminine, but its ending is arim, the adjective will reflect the actual gender of the noun, not the irregular ending. So we would not get, so it would, in other words, with the word avot, the adjective would be tovim, as opposed to tovot, as opposed to the ot ending. So avot tovim. So the adjective, in other words, the ending of the adjective is going to follow the gender, the actual gender of the noun, even if that noun's endings are somewhat irregular. Okay, now let's look at the two types of adjectives in greater detail, and hopefully this will help us to learn to distinguish them. Okay, so we'll begin with the attributive adjective. I have two rules to give you for the attributive adjective. One, the adjective follows the noun it modifies. Or when I was a Hebrew baby, I used to think the attributive adjective comes after the noun. That is, the adjective follows the noun that it modifies. And then the second rule is the adjective must agree with the noun in terms of gender, that is masculine or feminine, number, that is singular or plural, and definiteness, that is, does it have the definite article or not? Is it the or is it a? So let's look at an example. Melech gadol. Okay, melech, we know, we see this word all the time. King, right? Or a king, since it's not ha-melech, it's simply melech. And gadol. Gadol is a word for big or for great. A word that, that you might expect kings would want you to use in describing them. And in this case, we will do that. Melech gadol. This would be translated as a king, a great one. Kind of woodenly we could do it that way, but really a great king. There's no definite article, so we don't know which particular king, or if there is even a specific king in mind. This simply means a king, a great one, a great king is how we would translate this into English. And you'll notice that the gadol, which is the adjective, it agrees with the noun in terms of gender, right? This is a masculine form of the adjective, and it agrees in number, it's singular, and it agrees in definiteness. There's no definite article on the ha-melech, so there is no need to have a definite article on the adjective. Let's look at another example. Habayit hagadol. Habayit hagadol. So what do you notice about these two? Well, first of all, you have the definite article on habayit, right? So this means the house. Now you'll notice that you also have the definite article on gadol, so hagadol. This is an attributive adjective, so you'll notice it agrees, the adjective agrees with the noun on the level of gender, right? It has no ending, which is how you would, which is the true of the masculine nouns. It doesn't have, for instance, the comma te, which is common on feminine nouns. Um, it is singular. It doesn't have the eem ending on it. By it is masculine. And it also has the definite article. Okay, it has the definite article on it. So this is, now, this is very important to remember because this is going to be one of the points on which we can distinguish the attributive from the attributive from the predicate adjective. So they agree with one another. Oops, where's my sentence? There we go. The house, the great one. In other words, the great house is how we would actually translate this into English. The house, the great one. They agree with one another on all 3 points: gender, number, and definiteness. This is a clear example of the attributive adjective. Last one is old David, David Hazakain. David Hazakain. So here we notice, the reason I put this one up here is because to demonstrate that the definite nouns such as David, which is a personal name, their adjectives will also get the definite article, so that's why Hazakain has the definite article, even though we would never say Ha-David, right? This is just David. David alone is inherently definite. So old David, that's how you would say this. Old David. Let's now look at the predicate adjective, or it's referred to in your book as the adjective phrase. 2 rules here. Now try and pay close attention to how these rules are subtly different from the attributive adjective. The adjective agrees with the noun in gender and number, but it never takes the definite article. It never takes the definite article. Okay, that's going to be very helpful because remember the previous slide, the attributive adjective must agree with the noun in terms of gender, number, and definiteness. That means it must have the definite article if its noun is definite. Now, that is not the case with the predicate adjective. The adjective agrees with the noun in gender and number, but it doesn't take the definite article. And then secondly, the adjective can come either before or after the noun. So that's going to be a little bit trickier. Remember, the attributive adjective comes after the noun. The predicate adjective or the adjective phrase can come in either place. So you have to keep that in mind. So let's look at an example. Gadol habayit. Gadol habayit. Okay, we've already noticed a configuration of these words in the previous slide. But there's something different here. Gadol, notice how habayit has the definite article on it. We know that this means the house, right? Habayit means the house. But why doesn't Gadol have it? Well, because this is how the predicate adjective works. You would translate this, the adjective does not it does not agree with the noun in terms of its definiteness, so we would translate this as the house is big. The house is big. So really what the predicate adjective is, it is a verbless sentence in and of itself. We have to insert the word is, as we do with other verbless sentences, and we translate this as Gadol habayit, the house is big. The house is big. And you'll notice also that contrary to the attributive adjectives we were just looking at, in this case the adjective gadol comes before the noun. It could come after and it would still be attributive. But so the attributive adjective, I'm sorry, the predicate adjective can go either before or behind. Let's look at the next sentence. Ha'isha zakena. Ha'isha zakena. Okay, so we know the woman, right? Isha, the woman. Ha is the definite article. Zakena, this is the word for old. This is the adjective for old. Now, what do you notice about this? Well, again, there's a definite article on Ha'isha, so we know it's the woman, but there is not a definite article on Zakena. So we know this is an attributive predicate adjective. We know it's going to be to create its own verbless sentence, and so we would translate it as this: the woman is old. The woman is old. If Zakena had a definite article on it, then it would in fact be an attributive adjective, and we would have to translate it as the old woman. But because it lacks the definite article, it is a predicate adjective, creating its own self-contained sentence. The woman is old. Let's look at the third sentence. Habanim chachamim. Habanim chachamim. So here we have the word for sons. Here, banim, habanim, the sons, in fact. Chachamim, this is the adjective for wise. And what do we notice here? Again, no, there's a definite article on habanim, but there's no definite article on chachamim. Chachamim. There's no definite article there. But so the adjective does agree with its noun in terms of gender, right? The im signals masculine, and in terms of number, that is, they are both plural. But this is not the wise sons, this is the sons are wise. So you see again, the difference here is quite subtle, but there are two real indicators that are going to help you determine whether one thing is predicate or one adjective is a predicate adjective and one is an attributive adjective. The definite article is key, and then also the placement of the adjective. If the adjective comes prior to the noun, it's not attributive. If it comes after the noun, it could be either attributive or predicate. So you just have to pay close attention to those details. So time to do, there is no try, as Master Yoda says, so let's do a little bit of practice. Excuse me, I just needed a drink. Ha'amim harabim. Okay, so the first sentence, ha'amim harabim. What do you think? Is this an attributive adjective describing the noun amim, which is the word for peoples, the plural of am? Or is it a predicate adjective creating a sentence, a verbless sentence, which would be the people are great or something, or numerous or something like that? Go back to your rules and remember that what's going to definitely tell us that we are working with an attributive adjective is the fact that we have the ha on the rabim. Remember, in the predicate adjective can never take the definite article, okay? So the fact that we have a definite article on the adjective indicates to us in no uncertain terms that we are working here with an attributive adjective. So the many peoples, or the numerous peoples, we might say something like that. Let's look at the next example. Ha'amim rabim. Okay, very, very similar to the one that we just looked at. Very similar indeed. The one difference being there is no definite article on rabim, right? So what this tells us, since there is a definite article on ha'amim, this tells us, in no uncertain terms, we are working here with a predicate adjective. So where's my translation? There we are. The people are many, or numerous. The people are numerous. So we have to insert the are because this functions as a kind of verbless sentence. So the people are numerous. This is a predicate adjective. A predicate adjective describing the state of the noun, namely ha'amim. Let's look here at the next sentence, a feminine noun, isha zakena. Isha zakena. Okay, so Isha, of course, refers to a woman. What do you think? Is this a predicate or an attributive adjective? Look at it for a second. Refer back to the rules if you need to. And see if you can determine what it might be. Let's look back, actually. So an attributive adjective, it follows the noun it modifies. Okay, that seems to be the case here. The adjective must agree with the noun in terms of gender, number, and definiteness. That is also the case, right? So we have here Isha Zakena. It agrees with it in terms of gender, right? They both are feminine. It agrees in terms of number. They're both singular. And it agrees in terms of definiteness. There is no definite article. It's indefinite, in fact, and so the adjective reflects that. Well, okay, so it could be an attributive adjective. I wonder if it, let's look at the rules for the predicate. Does it follow the rules for the predicate? Does the adjective agree with the noun in terms of gender and number? Yes, that's true. But it never takes the definite article. Okay, well, that is also the case, right? Isha zakena has no definite article. And then finally, it can come either before or after the noun. Okay, so that actually causes some problems for us, right? Isha zakena actually fits the bill for both attributive and predicate adjectives. And in fact, that is the case. This phrase can be translated as either an old woman or a woman is old. Both are possible. So there's some ambiguity there, but in most cases, the context in which you're reading will permit you to determine which of the two it actually is. So I give you that example as a way of showing you that there is some ambiguity here, and it is possible to have examples in which both are there. Okay, and then finally, David Gadol. David Gadol. What do you think? Is this a predicate or attributive? The first thing you want to notice is that David is definite, right? So why, and then you may notice that Gadol is not definite, it is indefinite. So that's a clear indicator that this is a predicate adjective. David is great. If this were going to be an attributive adjective, it would require the definite article Hagadol. Okay, comparisons using min. Well, let's look at our Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris example here to show how we do comparisons in English. What does Chuck Norris say? My chest is hairier than your chest. And then Bruce Lee says, Kung Fu, my Kung Fu is better than your Kung Fu. This is from Enter the Dragon. So in English, the way that we do comparisons, if we want to compare one thing for another, so for instance, the case of Chuck Norris, if you want to compare chests, his chest to Bruce Lee's chest, you would say it is hairier than, so the ER indicates a comparison, and then than also. Or in the case of Bruce Lee, the better, the ER, better than, is a way of comparing his Kung Fu to Chuck Norris's Kung Fu. The way that Hebrew, now how does Hebrew do this? Well, one way that Hebrew does this is Hebrew makes comparisons by using mean or min. This is the preposition that we normally know as being from, right? We've looked at this, they went from Egypt to Israel or something like that, and you might use the word mean. But the way that Hebrew makes comparisons is they use this word mean and then they add an adjective. So let's look at an example. David gadol min hane'arim. David gadol min hane'arim. Literally, what does this say? David is great from the young men. You say you might say that's a strange phrase. What in the world does that mean? Well, this is in fact how Hebrew does the comparison. You would translate this as David is greater than the young men. Literally or woodenly, David is great from the young men, but the mean tells us that we're looking here actually at a comparison. David gadol min hane'arim. David is greater than the young men. Let's look at the bottom one. Hane'arot Chachamot min hane'arim. So the young men, the young women, hane'arot, the young women are wise from the young men. So how would you translate that? Woodenly, the young women are wise from the young men. But what they're really saying here is the young women are wiser than the young men. And of course it's definite because of the definite article on both. Ha-ne'arot, ha-ne'arim. Okay, let's just step back. There was a lot of material in there and quite a few examples. These are the focus questions we originally took up in the first slide. Why isn't there a verb in that sentence? How does one translate sentences that lack a verb. And so we looked at those, some of these verbless sentences, and we also looked at predicate adjectives, which are also themselves verbless sentences. How do Hebrew adjectives work? Okay, so we looked at the two kinds of adjectives. We looked at predicate adjectives, and then we looked at attributive adjectives, actually in the opposite order. Attributive first, and then predicate next. Actually, we didn't look at this, but I want to encourage you, as part of chapters 13 and 14, they also introduced the idea of demonstratives. That is the word for this, those, that, these, and that's something that you need to look at on your own. I didn't think that I would have time to actually look at it, so that's kind of an artifact of an earlier version of this presentation. So do make sure that you review those in your as you go through the chapter this week, the demonstratives. And then finally, how does Hebrew compare to things? And we were helpfully instructed there by Mr. Norris and Mr. Lee. Well, if you have any questions this week, you know where to find me, and I look forward to working with you through some of these issues. Thank you.